Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Trainer. I'm the CMO of Treasure Data. And today I'm really excited to be able to be here with the team from Trifecta, where we're talking about activating customer data, how Trifecta uses real time insights across multiple channels. So here we are with Nedi Solano. He's a Senior Director of Marketing. Kyle Pate, he's the Program Management Lead, and I'm Tom Trainer. And Nedi and Kyle, can you describe your roles a little bit?
Yes, I'm the senior director of marketing. Probably doesn't need a ton of explanation there, but I'm functioning as the head of marketing right now, running the creative team, our paid media teams, content teams, essentially the whole marketing engine right now, and with a lot of help from KP himself and his team.
I feel like my role is probably the opposite problem, where nobody understands what program management means. But from program management, I would say that I'm more of an analyst for Neti. I handle the marketing tech stack, so I've been really involved with our choices around CDP and around multi-touch attribution. Those are the core things in terms of. I also was a media buyer for Trifecta before I had this role. So
Yeah,
we share that in common in terms of a lot of experience with media buying.
exactly.
That's great. So you can really understand the media buyer's needs and what'll really help them. So that's why you can give them so much value, and you'll be able to give us some value through the discussion today.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about Trifecta. So can you describe Trifecta and give the listeners some details about the company?
Absolutely, yeah. So our product is an organically sourced meal delivery, but more than that, we're really focused around transformation and getting people um, moving along with their goals. That's a big part of what we're focused on. And more than just the food itself, we have an app, we have nutrition coaching, we have a library of resources to provide the tools you need to transform your life in whichever way you set out to do so.
Yeah.
I'll open it to you to
Yeah, and
jump in.
the only other thing was that community.
Community.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's kind of hard to keep them all in
Yeah,
one
yeah,
thing. I mean,
absolutely.
because like the app and the community come together. You have a lot of those people who are really dedicated. The most dedicated people. You'll see them on all the platforms.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that it's a combination of many things that really create this environment to support our customers in their journey towards transformation.
Great. Yeah, you have the coaching, the app, the food delivery, the community. That's a kind of the full service offering. So obviously, great to really understand your customers and work with them and kind of personalize the experience. So that makes a lot of sense. And just for the listeners and the audience, we have a few slides, and we're gonna have kind of a hybrid of Q&A and slides. So so we will linger on some of these slides a little bit longer than you might think, and then discuss, and then we'll move to the appropriate slides. But just to kick off the conversation, prior to having a CDP, what were things like? What kind of challenges did you have, and what drove the decision to get a CDP in the first place?
Yeah. Before CDP, we fancied ourselves, Google Analytics ninjas. Maybe we got like a little multi-touch software attribution platform over here, but ultimately, like nothing actually tied back to the customer.
Right.
Like the tech stack was all geared towards how can media buyers make the best decision around channels, but nobody really knew who our customers were. None of like that media buying decisions actually could be traced down to any customer. We kind of with the personas that we have, right? We have how many personas?
We had nine personas that we built out.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a very traditional manner. We looked at what our in-market fit was. We looked at basic demos and created these nine personas around that. And it's a tactic many have used. It's not a bad tactic, but I think that's what really we were working with before, and why we were looking to engage with Treasure Data and get a CDP.
Now we've done a case study with Trifecta, and we have it on our site. And one of the things I know is that the CEO wanted to future proof the company. Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, as a scaling company, I think at the time that we had the conversation, we wanted a better eye personally, I wanted a better multi-touch attribution software tool, like right, as with my media buying cap on. And Greg could see beyond that. You know, Greg wanted not only a tool that would do that, but something that would get us closer to having the data unified, right? Which is something I just didn't even know about at the time. So I'd say, like, you know, that's his foresight on it, because you often start with like one use case.
Yeah.
You know, I spent my first year using treasure data, applying those multiple use cases because I don't know if you know, no one's used to having much data.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think like it's definitely the kudos to Greg, our CEO, for really having that foresight of unifying data as a whole, and that has multiple values. I think both of us in this room had like more specific use cases, so it is great to kind of we've opened Pandora's box when it comes to like the capabilities we have now and what we can do moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, even like things I didn't expect, like we had dashboards. That's fine, right? But we ended up replacing those with the real-time data from treasure data because it was more reliable. You know, I like to say that Google Analytics is a free tool, and you have no right to sit there and complain about how slow, you know, your free tool is. And I even had a conversation with them about like Google 360, right? We'll give you a lot of money, but will that actually reduce the latency? And they're like, no. Which is the weirdest thing I've ever heard a salesperson say, like, no, it's not going to reduce the latency. But, you know, as Google decided that, hey, you don't need your data as fast, we were able to completely replace Google Analytics for that real-time information.
Yeah.
So you've replaced a lot of your dashboards with basically dashboards from treasure data and using the data in the CDP. What does that enable you to do to be able to see the you know, to reduce the latency and be able to see the data in different ways? Or
yeah, I think specifically for media buying, which is, you know, the quick moves that we make, we're working on, you know, couple hour to hour basis. We're making adjustments throughout the day as we see things come in, and when there is that much of a latency, we're not able to make those quick moves. And being a D2C online company, things move fast and things change fast, and mistakes can be hidden and costly if we don't have this quick feedback loop that treasure data allowed us to engage with.
Yeah. I think a good example also would be, you know, in terms of the analytics front. Yeah. Greg used to have like this uncanny ability. It's like 1 in the afternoon, you know. This is like also when I was like the only media buyer. It was like 1 in the afternoon, and he'd be like, "We don't have enough sales." And I'd be like, "I don't know that, right? Like, is 86, you know, or 186 too much for like the time that we're in?"
Right,
you know, like, that was a mystery to me. But I got tired of being behind the ball in his spidey sense so often that I just took the data that you could query in treasure data, because you could actually query things, right? To say, like, give me an arc of the average growth over the last 7 days so that we can apply our current growth to it. And what that made was a chart that essentially had, like, what could we expect in terms of cumulative growth for this moment versus where are we right now? You know, are we growing faster or slower?
Right.
Never caught flat-footed.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, it wasn't a question in anyone's mind. It was visible on a dashboard, on a big TV in the office. So it really allowed us all to be on the same page and not have a CEO or anyone else come in and be like, "Oh, we're not hitting the numbers we want to hit," or "Why are we not on pace?" Right. So everyone's on the same page all the time.
That's great. And so we'll cover some more use cases and how you're using it in a minute. And then let's step back for a second and talk about the implementation process and, you know, how long that took and how the process went, and were there any surprises throughout that process?
Yeah, that's definitely a KP question. He was the one that fought hard to get this going.
I mean, to be frank, and I think other companies will find them, you know, in the same place. You know, when you're dealing with just the possibilities of what can you do once you have all the data, the imagination of it isn't always there. So treasure data like had people for us, like ready with us 24/7. Like for lots of things, like if I needed to understand how to achieve like that SQL query we talked about earlier, right, about the activations. Like there's a live chat, and we also have like the representatives who are helping us onboard. And so in terms of like the process, I was, as a novice, didn't really understand like what would it take to get all of our e-commerce data into this, data warehouse essentially, and unify it. And I didn't have to become an expert in that for it to happen, right? Like I think it might have taken like a month or two to really like get it all automatically syncing, because we have a lot of different platforms. But that's not something that I like remember starkly about treasure data, right? We just moved on.
Right. It definitely wasn't like super painful.
Yeah.
And you integrated on that first slide. Then also you integrated 14 previously siloed data systems, and you found and reduced 50,000 duplicate profiles, right? So you're getting cost savings right off the bat because you don't have to advertise to those duplicate profiles, etc. And I know we'll talk about content in a little bit, but you're also analyzing your blog post for the smart attribution.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one of the use cases that
Right.
would be impossible with any other multi-touch attribution tool. I want to touch on that. Like,
yeah, let's dive into that.
Yeah,
talk about how you're using that.
I mean, because we have this huge blog. Like,
right.
How you describe the blog strategy?
I mean, it was kind of like the initial start to our marketing strategy as a whole. A Trifecta, really early stage, was starting off as like a content machine, and so we built out educational content online in a few different kind of pillar cluster strategies for anyone who's a fan of SEO. And through that, we were able to drive millions in traffic, and tying that together to an acquisition path was a feat. And so Treasure Data and KP's work was able to really tie that together and again unify and give us a view into that space, which before was much more of a just looking at the linear relationship between traffic, lead capture, and conversions,
Right.
which can be a black box sometimes, as many marketers know.
Like any multi-touch attribution tool that you go and pay for, it's going to focus on where did the traffic come from and did they convert?
Right.
And interacting with your blog on your website is not generally considered a channel in and of itself, right? All of those activations would show up as, well, organic search did something, great.
Yeah.
Organic search is doing well. That doesn't tell us which content is actually making those sales.
Right.
Like, so with Treasure Data, we were able to take not only like, sure, they came from organic search, but can you show me all of the blog pages that showed up in the purchase path of these individuals?
Yeah.
So we can kind of count it up and see like, oh, this weight loss article, came up with like 20% of our activations from blog.
Yeah, no, and like that backwards look of like looking what acquisition did happen and which content fit in that pathway was really what gave us that view. So yeah, no, that was a great insight that we got out of this.
How do you feed that back into your SEO and keyword strategy?
Absolutely. No, it gave us the ability to kind of sharpen our target versus spreading out into more and more different education kind of topics. We're able to really shave down to really a core set of here are the pathways that we're seeing conversions. Let's continue to focus on those and scale that way. And so from there, we're able to pull different keywords and even like overlap SEM in there as well. So yeah, it helped us really refine our strategy versus just kind of expand into different keywords.
No, that's great. And with organic, who doesn't love free traffic and free conversions?
Right, absolutely.
So let's move on to personas. So I'm going to so let's talk to this slide and explain it, and then we'll talk more about your persona process.
Yeah, I can jump off. Like we mentioned before, we had 9 personas, and they were built in a very traditional way. Here's a breakdown that is used and we've used to kind of like create these personas and create these demos. And again, it's just a high level view. It doesn't really glean a lot of information as far as who the customer is. And KP has a really good analogy on this, so I'm gonna let him take over.
Well, I mean, if you have 9 personas that you made as a marketer in a dark room, right? Then there's going to be really good for helping you do copywriting, getting the content out the door.
Yes.
But when you're looking at like this chart that we have here, like this is, we don't have the benefit as a direct consumer company of like going out to Target, and, peering over and seeing who's buying our product, right? At best, they're going to fill a little quiz out on our website, or they're going to make an order, and we'll say, great, people who are in their 40s have, a lot more 2 to 6 orders. That's not a persona, right? That's just a kind of like a fact.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't help us really reach our audience.
Yeah, this is kind of age brackets and loyalty level by age bracket, basically.
Yes. Yeah. And then like we're taking the product market fit that we've seen and found and combining those two. And that's the birth of the 9 personas, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, then you're I think internally, does everyone agree at this previous time? Did everyone agree on the personas?
I think what the 9 personas did us a disservice on is that there was a variety of abilities to kind of hit each persona. Mm-hmm. So our marketing was kind of, again, similar to the blog, it was spread out amongst a few different targets. Right. And that's kind of like what this slide's about is really the biggest hurdle we have to come across is, or overcome, is the ability to reconcile who you think you are with who you actually are. Who is your customer? Who is the core that you're addressing? And if you look at our advertising, even currently, you would probably make a wrong assumption about who our core audience is. And that is similar to anyone that we were hiring, anyone that was looking at us or advising us. They were making the same assumption. And I'll share one of the names of our old personas, which is Hard Body Harry. This is someone who works out all the time, who is probably a bodybuilder or some kind of athlete, and they're wanting the convenience of our product. If you look at our advertising, this is the persona you would assume we're going after. Right. But in reality, after looking at this data and really unifying and getting this, the word I use is vignette into who our customer is, we started to realize that is not the customer we were grabbing. That's not the attention we were pulling. And it really made us readdress the why and the how and the who of our core audience.
So you got this single customer view, right? So you're starting to pull together the single customer view from all those data sources. Yeah. So tell me about the process and what the outcome was.
Yeah.
So what you see before you is when we really wanted to create that vignette, we were getting our Series B funding. And I mean, there were conversations when you're bringing up the Hard Body Harry, one of the upsides of that is what creative are you going to make?
Right.
Like, it's not just, we think, A plus B equals that, everyone's just CrossFit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was like assumption going in. And as we become like more like masters of marketing, you can see the data in front of you, you can kind of realize that like the stereotype of who owns a Mercedes is not who actually owns a Mercedes.
Right.
And you often find that when you kind of piece apart the underlying data. But the underlying data doesn't give you the powerful impact of a vignette like this. There's a big difference between like the chart we saw and what we saw here, and I was able to present. So what you're seeing here is about 4 or 5 different data sources that we were able to string together to actually make. I think I made about 20 profiles for that presentation. We call it like the People of Trifecta presentation. But and I anonymized it. I downloaded someone's picture from the internet. But what we were able to learn is, the people who our advertising in our company was really attracting was not CrossFit people so much as mothers of adult children or mothers of children in their 40s, which is not even how we conceived of like people using the product, right? And we were able to say, okay, so here's the e-commerce data, right? And we know that they spent this much money, they like this meal plan, but then let's layer on like, what was the demographic data that they gave us on the website, right? Like we have a lot of rich first-party data on our website, and that might just be enough for some platforms. But further, we're able to say, let's match this person to some Newstar data or some Axiom data, it's third-party data platforms, to actually get like a little bit more rich, like, oh, I see that they actually watch connected TV. That was a big validation of our connected TV strategy. And, we were also able to tie in, really useful for me in particular, was going back to that multi-touch attribution.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the path you see down here is. It's like this person with this lifetime value and these nutrition goals who has these values first looked us up on organic search. Then they saw this Facebook ad, right? We're piecing this together. This is their actual path to purchase. From clicking that Facebook ad, we clearly got their email and they entered our automated email flow. And from that automated email, they eventually purchased. And if you could imagine all of the creative and learnings that come from just knowing this vignette.
No, and that it's infinite, kind of like where your mind can kind of go. And really, this is the peering over the shelf at Target and seeing a customer interacting with your product and watching them all the way down to the checkout, which is, immensely powerful for any marketer to look at and kind of create that true view, right? And understanding of the customer. And I think that's what really was eye-opening, is not only how do we choose the creative that we're using, it's the creative that we're using is not doing what we would automatically assume. And again, that didn't mean we needed to change our tactic. I mean, we just had to unpack why we were using the creative we were using and why it was affecting and interacting with these customers were interacting with that creative. And so it was great to kind of like really focus in on the idea of transformation. And that's the core thing that kind of came out of this too, is we are attaching to specific goals. Like this one, for example, is weight loss. And that is something we can really hone in our messaging around and really focus our positioning around, rather than having these like 9 personas with probably 9 different goals. So that was immensely helpful.
Oh, that's powerful. And then does the single customer view that you're able to get in this vignette, does it also expand beyond marketing into your kind of sales and support and kind of coaching portions of the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And then even today, I've had a discussion with the sales team kind of expressing this idea. And it does help because our sales and customer service team are engaging with customers on a one-on-one basis. And them understanding this positioning really helps them hit that message even harder on that one-to-one kind of moment, rather than speaking to the value of the food itself or the product itself. They can speak to this deeper kind of goal setting and transformation structure that we've discovered through this vignette.
Yeah, like you don't get a $10,000 lifetime value
Right.
by selling somebody some chicken and rice.
Right,
like,
right.
That's not how things work.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's the cleanest way to put it, right? Is no one's buying $10,000 worth of chicken and rice.
Right. And I think to your question, it's not as like we're obviously like pumped about this vignette, but also like a less sexy thing that Treasure Data brings is like this paleo meal plan and this nutrition goal and this amount of lifetime value doesn't just magically appear in Salesforce when someone calls in.
Right.
Like, there are pipes under here that I had to set up, that Treasure Data set up themselves, where it's like this information lives half in HubSpot. Some of it lives just in Treasure Data. Some of it, like, again, it has to be enriched. Mm-hmm. And then they're calling in, and the salespeople are actually using Salesforce, right? They're not going to go open the 3 other platforms to have context from who this person is, right, and what their goal is. We've got to provide that so they can do it in real time.
That's awesome. And I want to just quickly show a couple of things, and then I want to talk about the future. So just so people have context on how a CDP works, The treasure data CDP helps, we help our customers power customized experiences at scale across the entire organization and at all steps of the customer journey. So like as in the Trifecta case, we have 14 different data sources, including browsing behavior, transactional data, quiz data, e-commerce data, etc. And that helps drive things like digital media on the awareness side, customer care, people calling into the call center, clienteling if you had a physical locations, and upsell and cross-sell opportunities and retention campaigns. And it's all built on one powerful big data platform serving marketing, sales, and service. And it's a comprehensive offering, including 400 plus connectors to ingest the data, as well as to push out into activation channels, and includes ETL, robust identity resolution capabilities, AI and ML capabilities for predictive modeling, which I want to talk about in a second, customer analytics, and more. And so that's where I wanted to get to. What are you thinking next? Because like you said, your mind goes into all these endless opportunities once the data is there, once it's unified. So what do you think is next for Trifecta?
Predictive score.
Yeah, that's the one.
Nettie wrote on a whiteboard for me. He was like, "This is the top priority." We had marketing automations and that machine learning, and I think the treasure data's predictive scoring is one of those. We gave example of very static attributes for people, right? But also syncing predictive scoring around propensity to purchase or the propensity to churn, right?
Right.
And I don't know what other marketing automations.
No, I mean, I think that's the core to focus on now, because the first step was kind of reveal this black box, which we've been able to do that. And the next step is what can we do as far as predictability here? Can we look into the future and glean value from this data that we're collecting and create this propensity to purchase, and make sure that not only do we have that, but we have this higher value and really avoiding the propensity to churn or engaging with propensity to churn differently. I think that's the next step for us, and that's the future look, is how do we create more predictability and really empower our marketing teams to make these decisions and target specific groups and specific audiences.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, right. You reveal the black box, you have analytics, you have feedback loops for your campaigns. You have some specific use cases, and you have you're understanding content. You're feeding that back into the content and SEO plan, and then now you're expanding into more use cases, which is that's a great way to go. You have that foundation, build on use cases and better customer understanding and strategy. So sounds like you guys have a great program. Really enjoyed doing the case study with you and enjoyed talking about it today. Is there anything else you think we should know about the kind of the CDP process, or thoughts about how people might decide whether they should do a CDP or not?
Yeah. One of the things that I like to think about is it's not just one of those tiny software as a service companies, right? So with this multi-touch attribution, we wanted to run it more often than once a day. And you're not going to get that transparency and that decision, the ability to make that decision with just one small multi-touch attribution software, right? But we actually get that transparency in those workflows. We get to dictate them. I think that's important for making these innovations.
Absolutely. And I think going back to the beginning, full circle, this decision was about future proofing as a whole. As we just discussed, we've tapped into some foundational things, but there's much more to glean from treasure data and this unification, and even more that treasure data allows. So the decision is more, what are you looking to grow into? And there's lots of low-hanging fruit here, to use a marketing term, to grab, but then there's more and more to grow into as you expand your efforts.
That's perfect. Love that. Thank you. Appreciate you guys coming on and telling us about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
My pleasure.